Hi, and welcome to the Lone Star Play podcast, where we sit, eat, chat, and repeat. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong, and we are coming to you from Austin, Texas. The Lone Star Play podcast is produced by Texas Real Food. Go to texasrealfood.com, and you can search your city for local restaurants, stores, butchers, farmers markets, and more who are using organic, fresh, artisanal, and local sources. It's a fun site that brings all natural options all together. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this very special podcast episode. We have Chris Harrison in the house. Yes, that Chris Harrison from The Bachelor, okay? The Bachelor franchise, The Bachelorette, Bachelor Paradise. There's all kinds of bachelors. Great show, super popular, been around since the spring of 2002, and Chris Harrison has hosted every single episode. So almost 20 years, quite amazing. But what's great about Chris is, he was born in Dallas, from Dallas. So that's why we're having him on. He's from Texas boy, doing great in the world. Really, really happy for him. We're going to talk to him about food, right? What do they eat on The Bachelor? That sort of thing. We're also going to talk about him personally. Chris, what sort of, food does he eat, and what does he get into? And, does he go to farmers markets, and what does he think about what Texas is doing with real food. We're going to talk to him about that, The Bachelor, what's coming up next. How is The Bachelor going to change moving forward with, the pandemic and everything that's happening? It's going to be really curious to see how they film these shows, probably any show or movie. I mean, right? Every industry is just, been put on alert, right? So they've all got to pivot or adapt to what's happening. So we're just going to talk to Chris about that, food, The Bachelor, himself, and his early career. Just kind of get into it with Chris and maybe learn a little bit more about him. I found it interesting. I went online and tried to do some research on him, and there is a lot of information on him. There's tons of interviews, of course. But one thing I did notice is there's really no interviews with just getting to know Chris Harrison. And not just what he does on The Bachelor. So we're going to get to know Chris a little bit better. So really want to thank Chris for coming on, and very excited to have him. So sit back, enjoy the episode. Hopefully you learned something new about The Bachelor. I'll do my best, guys, to get to give us some juicy info. All right, enjoy the episode.
How's it going?
Great, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day, sir. I love that hat, by the way.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Texas. There we go, brother. Thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to us, and our listeners and our viewers are really excited to talk to you today.
You bet. Where are you coming from this morning?
I'm in Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Austin. Where are you at today? I'm assuming you're not in Dallas.
Los Angeles, yeah.
Los Angeles,
yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk to you about your Texas connection. You were born in Dallas, which is where I grew up actually too,
Really?
in the HEB area specifically. So yeah, you were born in Dallas, and what was that like growing up in Texas for you?
I always say Dallas is a great place to be from, especially when I grew up. It was, 70s, 80s. So, the city was blowing up. It was really growing, kind of finding itself. It was a great time to be around Dallas. I think it changed a little bit late 90s into the 2000s, where it was kind of trying to identify itself and figure out, is it going to be the next LA? And it was this weird transitional phase where all of a sudden these great bars and restaurants I had been going to in the 80s and 90s all of a sudden put up a velvet rope and started charging $20 to get in, and it lost a little bit of that great vibe that, well, Austin, for example, has. And but I think it's come back finally. There was a weird time where it went through this identity crisis, but I think Dallas is actually back. But when I was growing up, there really was this big city, but a very small town, as I like to say.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And actually, that's how people describe Austin to this day, right? It's just a big city, small town.
Austin somehow, and I've been all over Texas. I have family everywhere. Austin's been able to keep that, and it has exploded and obviously blown up. And a lot of us idiots from California are trying to escape, and they're coming to keep this out of there as possible. But it's still remained and it's still kept its identity. And I don't know if it's the University of Texas and all those college students that have helped, if it's the music, if it's just, the old school vibe around there, but it's somehow kept its identity. And Houston lost it, Dallas lost it, and these cities have had to kind of reinvent themselves. But Austin's kind of remained cool, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually, that's actually a conversation that's happening right now because of Tesla and some other companies that are talking about moving to Texas. So there's just a lot of murmur around here that they don't want anybody to come from California, which is kind of crazy to me. I'm all about welcoming people from wherever. I've lived in a lot of different places around the world myself, so I anybody, I bring them. It doesn't bother me at all. But it's kind of a crazy conversation to have. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's, one of the cool things about Austin has always been it is the weird melting pot where old school Texas conservatives and obviously the hippies and liberals can kind of blend and share the same bar and drink the same beer. So it's always been that place. It's always been the weird melting pot of Texas. Obviously, there's crazy German roots around there from years ago. And so it's always been that place. And whether the Californians are invading or whoever's moving in, whatever day it is, you want that influx. I know we're calling it the Silicon Valley. That's still an influx of cash. It's jobs. It's, and people see the tax benefits. I hope to move back home someday in the next couple of years when my kids are out of high school. And Austin is definitely number one on the list with Dallas, and just right there of where I want to settle down and, spend the rest of my days. I always knew I would come home to Texas eventually. And luckily with my job, I can kind of do it from wherever because I travel a lot.
Yeah, that's, your job. Let's talk about that. I love how you just say your job. Your job is like one of the craziest things to do, in this country. It's crazy. You host an amazing show, right? You're in the homes of so many Americans. It's got to be a great feeling. You've been doing the show since spring of 2002. Do I have that right?
That's right. 18 years.
Wow. How crazy. I'm assuming you never imagined that it would go that long. But first of all, how did you even get into hosting The Bachelor?
Well, when I left Dallas, I graduated. I went to Lake Highlands. And when I graduated from Lake Highlands High School in Dallas, I went to Oklahoma City University to play soccer. So I was in Oklahoma City for quite some time. And when I graduated, I started as a sportscaster there and was a sportscaster for years. And the natural transition from being soccer player and all that in sports. And I really wanted to just move back home to Dallas and be a sportscaster and, cover my Cowboys and Rangers and live happily ever after. And lo and behold, this opportunity came up to move to LA, and I took a flyer. I just said, you know what, I can always come back home. I had never been to California. We didn't have any money growing up in Dallas, so I didn't travel much at all. And so, I'll never forget my first plane ride. I think I was like 14 years old, and my parents put me on Braniff out of Love Field to Houston just to see what it was like to fly. And I just flew down there and back, and just so I could tell my friends I had been on an airplane before I turned 16, for crying out loud. But it was such a great opportunity when The Bachelor came around in 2002. And like you said, nobody can tell you that they have a hit on their hands. If they do, they're either ignorant or lying or both. You just don't know. And even when the show was big in 2002, 2003, 2004, who's to say it's going to be huge in 2020? I mean, that doesn't happen in television.
Yep. Yeah, and it's been massive. Obviously, you guys have branched out and done, the different shows, The Bachelorette, Bachelor Paradise. Do you think social media because when that started in 2002, there was no social media, so that must have helped, right? Too, Twitters and the Instagrams and the Facebooks, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. The show is obviously huge without it. I think more than anything, whether it's big because of it, you just had to adapt to it. And bizarrely, we created a show before this ever existed that is socially relevant. It's perfect for now, except we created it back in 2000, 2001 when we couldn't have possibly known what we were doing. But what I mean by that is it's, the shows that drive conversation, community, you have to talk about it like it's a sporting event. You have to tweet and talk about The Bachelor on Monday night or Tuesday morning, or you're out of the conversation. You're out of that zeitgeist. And so we created that before it ever existed. And so it's amazing now. I'll sit in these pitch meetings and there's always these catchphrases in these meetings from executives of like, how do we make something viral and how do we make it? I said, well, first of all, when a bunch of old executives say, how do we make something cool? It's immediately not cool. That's how that works. It's amazing. And so everybody has been killing themselves over the last 5 to 10 years of how do we make something viral? How do we make it a social media, phenomenon? And you can't. The Kardashians didn't mean to become social media icons. They did. And same thing with The Bachelor. Things either do or they don't. Yes, you can do certain things to push it, but it either catches fire or it doesn't. And the more you try to push things and make it viral, the more it doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're basically saying don't force it. You're basically saying just get the right contestants, we get the right bachelor or bachelorette, and just go from there, right? It just sort of unfolds.
Yeah. Well, and you got to look, to your point, when we started in 2002, say our first Bachelorette, Trista, she is not the same as Hannah B.
Yeah.
And if we had just been following Trista, you would have a 40-something-year-old mom who lives in Vail. I love Trista, but is that interesting to kids in high school and college? Probably not. But what is interesting is Colton and Hannah and Peter. And so the show has regenerated and refreshes itself with this generation, which is interesting. So we pick up new fans, but we haven't lost our old fans either.
Wow, that's incredible. And I bet some of these new, Bachelor, Bachelorettes, they were just kids when the Bachelor came out. So that's got to be interesting. They're fans of it. Now they're on the show. I had a quick question about this because I did a lot of research over the weekend, watching, old episodes and stuff with yourself as well. I'm curious if y'all ever plan on having, and I'm sure you do, a chef on as a Bachelor or Bachelorette.
I would love that. Yeah, we've never had a legit chef. Would it be Jamie Oliver, Bobby Flay type celebrity chef? I don't know if we could go that high, but like just a really good chef who owns his own place, owns his own restaurant. We've had restaurateurs, bar owners, like Brad Womack from Austin, Texas is, kind of one of our famous bachelors, but we've never had like a crazy good chef. And I'm such a foodie and such a wino. I would love to have that.
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, look, you watch Top Chef. That's a really good show to learn about a lot of different chefs all over the country who are running their own operations.
It's definitely my guilty pleasure. I love cooking shows. I love all that stuff. One of the greatest like little side gigs I ever had, I've gotten to do some fun stuff, was be a judge on Iron Chef America. And it was a special Christmas edition. So unfortunately, they play it all the time during Christmas. I have my scarf on. It's this ridiculous outfit. But it was Chef Morimoto going against Chef Bobby Flay. And so it was Iron Chef against Iron Chef that day. And it was awesome.
That's amazing.
Really, by the way, they really do have to cook the time, and you really do eat the food as, they have 60 minutes to do it, and then they shut it down and then they feed you. And it's awesome.
Oh, wow. So it is exactly like they're saying it. Wow, can you imagine the time crunch? I mean, look, chefs are already, I'm a chef myself. I've been in the industry for a long time. Like,
okay.
you learn the pressure, you learn the time. Honestly, that's not even that big a deal. Like that's why I love that show, because you see, Bobby especially, like he's just in it. He just loves it. Yeah. He's in it. He loves that pressure.
That's what those guys live for.
They live for that. Absolutely.
And one of the coolest moments. So, again, this was a special edition. So they also had to incorporate an ice sculpture and all this other stuff. And Chef Morimoto created out of this ice block a smoker, and he smoked some raw fish. And I'll never forget, Bobby Flay walked over and looked at it and was like, this thing's over. Like, I'm done. Like, and so it's just funny. You look at like the Michael Jordans of the world. It's funny to see like the greatest in the world have respect for each other. And they're like, oh man, this guy just dusted me.
He just dusted me. Absolutely. Well, look, they know, right? They know. And honestly, you're proud of that. You're proud of somebody shows you something you didn't know was possible. I think that's what it is. It's about one-upping. I actually worked for Stephen Piles, who's from Dallas there. He actually trained Bobby Flay in the very beginning of his career. So I have a small connection to that.
It's interesting who becomes commercial and how these guys can become commercial now. I mean, it's crazy. And the way they've been able to expand. Growing up in Dallas, I was very aware when I was younger of the chain restaurant mold that was being created. And it really started in the 70s and 80s. And for the most part, started around whether it was Chili's. I grew up on the original Chili's by Mark. I would go play my soccer games as a kid. Did you go across the street to the original Chili's on Greenville?
Yeah.
And then I never forget when it was knocked down, moved back 100 yards, and then they built the first actual Chili's. And you're like, oh, and then you started seeing them around. And even as a kid, I go, oh, I see what's happening. And Macaroni Grill and all these other things that came out of Texas.
Yeah.
And then that broke down, and now we actually have the chef movement of these real good chefs that are doing some incredible stuff, especially in Texas, where you have this bizarre mix of barbecue and all these different kind of worlds coming together. I think it's even better and more interesting than LA. LA
Wow.
LA got really bland for a while, and we were even taken off the Michelin list for a while, where they wouldn't even rate LA because it was just so boring.
Yeah.
But now we finally have this, which is crazy because we have Koreatown, Chinatown, you have every nationality here in LA. I don't know why. And a lot of Latinos, and you have this Baja Mexico vibe going with Mediterranean food and fish. So I don't know why it got bland and boring for a while, but Texas has always had this great culture to it where it is this good blend, and the food's always been there.
Absolutely. They just added Texas to the James Beard awards. It has its own category. Actually, California does too now, but Texas as itself, because look, the best chefs come out of Texas. I'm just going to say that. I'm biased, I think, but yeah, that's the true. Austin, Houston, Dallas. I mean, there's just San Antonio. I hate to leave that out, and even El Paso. And there's just really some amazing chefs, like you said. This whole farm.
San Antonio does get overlooked
right?
a lot.
San Antonio, it gets overlooked a lot. Why do you think that is? Is it just because it's like hidden in the Austin bubble?
I think it was known, especially for me growing up, it was such a touristy town.
Yeah.
It was known as the place you went to go see the missions, go see the Alamo, go to the Riverwalk. It wasn't given its due. And I remember as a kid, we would go in and there was I forget the name of the place, we'd go eat cabrito down there. And my dad would always get the goat there. And it's like the legit Mexican. Obviously, you can get Tex-Mex anywhere, but down in San Antonio, you could get easily the best legit Mexican food. I haven't been there in a while, as far as see what the restaurant scene has been, as much as I have in Austin and Dallas and Houston.
Sure.
But yeah, it's funny how San Antonio does get overlooked, and the culture there is phenomenal. Clearly.
Absolutely, it's actually growing. To be honest with you, right now on the east side of San Antonio, they're starting to build it out, sort of like they did in Uptown and Dallas, and even the Domain part of Austin. So they're trying to do that, new buildings, new things. We'll see. Hopefully it'll carry around. I went out there a couple months ago to a new brewery, and it was absolutely fabulous. And just to see the stuff that they're building and whatever. So yeah, maybe that'll change here in the coming months. I mean, look, there's just a lot of great cities, that overlook.
I have my toes in the business because I'm part owner of a brewery in Dallas, Steam Theory Brewing, and it's in Trinity Groves, kind of a hip part of Dallas, just across the bridge there from downtown. Yeah. And we've been going for a couple of years. Obviously, things are a little tight and tough right now, but we are a working brewery. We have there's such a beer vibe in Dallas, and people are so passionate about it. We have this amazing award-winning brewmaster, and we have 22 beers on tap, great food, great kitchen, solid chef doing some interesting stuff. Not just brew pub, actually taking our food to a good level where you get a really solid, creative meal.
That's awesome. Wow, that's amazing. Well, I didn't know about the brewery. I didn't see that in my research. That's amazing. Yeah, that's got to be a great thing to be a part of. Craft brewery, that's another thing to talk about. Craft breweries have exploded in the past 10 years. And you said you enjoy wine. Same thing with wine. What do you think about Texas wine now? That's a good question. How has that changed?
God, we'll talk about change. It's gone from 0 to 100. Look, it's not Napa Valley or even Walla Walla Valley yet, but
sure.
There are, it makes total sense when you get outside of Austin, Georgetown, and down towards San Antonio. The Hill Country, it might as well be Napa Valley. It looks just like it. You don't have the breezes coming in from the ocean, though, and then the cooling sensation, a lot of the stuff that you do get in Napa and some of the great places off the Oregon coast and Washington. So it's not the same vibe. You have the same soil, a lot of the same nutrients and all that. But I've had some decent Texas wines. I haven't anything that's blown me away yet. It still hasn't quite found its footing in the grand scheme of things. But, what they could do now with horticulture and everything else, I think people are going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I love the fact that outside Austin, you can go visit a bunch of vineyards now.
Absolutely. I'm in a lucky spot. I really love Austin and living in this part of the state because, you head out west a little bit and you're in the hill country like you were talking about, where you can try these wines. I will say there's one good vineyard that I do like. It's called Dukeman Winery. They do serve some really amazing wines that would just blow you away. Again, you just won't
Really?
even think they're from Tech. Yeah, Dukeman Winery. They're amazing. It's same thing with even liquor, right?
Is
Like whiskey, all that's taken
Yeah.
off.
Is there a particular varietal that is working there? Is it the Syrahs? Is it what's working? What grape is actually working?
The best grape that grows in Texas is Tempranillo. That's just hands down, just because of the climate, and it's very similar to southern parts of
Spain?
Spain. Yeah, I lived in
Yeah.
Spain for many years. I actually lived in Andalusia, Granada, where some of those grapes are grown. It's the Tempranillo, but they figured out a way, like you were mentioning, Syrah, Cabernet, Merlot, and even some other grapes. Honestly, I never even heard of. And I thought I knew a lot of grapes, but apparently there's thousands of grapes. So there's really no way to know
It
all
is.
of them.
Believe it.
But yeah,
I had no, so when I started The Bachelor, I wasn't a big wine guy at all. Didn't know. I mean, I knew there was white wine and red wine,
yeah,
and we had this Bachelor, Andrew Firestone, just a few years
yeah.
in, and Andrew Firestone clearly had the Firestone wine label, and we just spent a bunch of time together, became really good friends, and I started going up to San Ynez, which is only about an hour away from where I live, and we would go to his vineyard, and he and his dad and his brothers, like they taught me this world, and I just. It's such a beautiful, romantic, amazing thing. The grape process and
Yeah,
growing, and I
yeah.
couldn't help but fall in love with it. And so that was how I kind of got my love of wine, and it took off from there. And thankfully I do get to travel the world kind of like you have because of this show. I've shot in the Stellenbosch region. We've been to Portugal,
Wow,
we've been to Spain, we've been to Italy and France and
wow.
Australia, New Zealand. So all these places now are wine industry, wine country. And so,
Yeah.
I've had the ability to drink and taste all around the world. And I absolutely love that part of the show is being able to travel, eat and drink my way around the world.
Boy, that's amazing. You know what, Chris? You could do like a little side gig, get a little camera crew, Chris on location trying different stuff. I would watch that. That'd be great.
We've talked about that. We have actually talked about, I was like, we could start a whole new show of just like the stuff I do on the side and the places I go eat and the people, because you meet these people. We have a lot of locals that we hire no matter where we go. And it's kind of one of the cool things. And so, you're in the outskirts of Spain or wherever. And it's like you get these locals like, okay, take me to your spot.
Yeah,
And you go meet
exactly.
these mom and pop places and these restaurants and these chefs and they're so excited to kind of show you what they're doing and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's what is this is just a quick question. I'm sure people will be curious to know what is your favorite type of wine to drink. If you were, you're going to have not just one bottle. Let's say you're going to have a few bottles because that to me is a different choice, right? I'm going to have to
Yeah.
drink a few of these bottles. What is your sort of drinking wine?
At the end of the day, if you said you're on a deserted island, you can only have one wine for
Yeah.
an unbelievable killer Napa Cab. At the end of the day, when I'll taste everything around the world, and I have an appreciation and love of everything. But when you have just a stellar Napa Cab that it's about 10 years old, it's just perfect. There, nothing beats it.
I agree.
As soon as you open it, you smell it. I'm like, okay, I'm home. This is it. This is all I want. Just wrap me in a blanket. That's the go-to. And again, I love so many others, and I'll get on these other kicks for a while. That I come back and I'm like, wow, you just can't beat it.
Yeah, there's nothing like a good. It's really the body of it, right? I'm assuming a good body.
And luckily, I've had the chance to meet so many vintners and so many winemakers, and I've become good friends with a lot of these people, and so have some. And when you're here in California, you just have access. It's like being over in Europe, and you can get any kind of whiskey for $20. We
Sure.
have such great access to wines that my friends in Texas just don't get. So they come out here and start drinking stuff, and they're like, "This is unbelievable." And so the access out here is pretty awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, I guess it starts there, right? Getting the access to it. I had a quick question for you, Chris. Like, I'm curious what type of food, and not to bring it back to The Bachelor, I do want to talk more about, your background, but I'm curious what they eat on The Bachelor and what they drink on The Bachelor. Like that's what I was watching. I'm thinking, what is going on behind the scenes here? Like, is there a chef, a private chef in house that sort of makes them whatever they want?
I don't know if you could call it a chef as much as catering.
Okay.
But really what we do is we leave them to their own devices for the most part.
Oh,
Day in and
really?
day out, we have a shopping list that we keep, and they put what they want, and bacon and eggs and turkey and whatever. And so they're
Hmm.
kind of left to their own devices. That's kind of part of this thing. If you're living with 20 people, is you have to figure it out. Now, once we hit the road, essentially we set up buffets for everybody, and they do room service or whatever. But the
Got
only
it.
time we really have catering is on the big rose ceremony nights. We'll bring in a crew that kind of has this rotating catering thing going in the kitchen, and it's a bit of a cocktail party. But day in and day out, it's kind of up to you. That's the dynamic we want in the house. Is okay, who's going to emerge as the cook? Who's going to emerge as the person that cleans? Who's the person that doesn't do anything? And what
Yeah.
and what kind of social dynamic does that create?
Interesting. Okay, I like that. Yeah, I honestly would have never thought that. I just would assume there's probably one chef or somebody in there that's cooking for them. But yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense to just see what they're going to do and how they do it. Has anybody like caused fires? Burning stuff in the oven, and that's what I imagine happening.
I mean, yeah, there's been plenty of burning stuff or leaving stuff on the stove or what, but luckily nothing, too traumatic and
Yeah.
dramatic yet, as far as grease fires or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the house we shoot in is an actual house, and I actually know them. They're friends of ours, and so this is a huge, big old kitchen in a real house, and so I mean they're really just living their lives,
That's what I would be most excited about if I was in that house. What an amazing kitchen. That's the first thing I check out in anybody's house, the kitchen.
right?
What's going on? I live around my kitchen. I mean, I don't even, if we could put a bed in there, I never leave it, to be honest with you. I just love my kitchen. So, yeah, man, that's amazing. I was definitely curious about that. Chris, I was wondering as far as, there's obviously this whole pandemic happening in the world right now, and it's affecting a lot of lives. And I know it's affecting a lot of industries, and definitely your industry as well. I'm curious how the show is going to move forward with this. You know,
Yeah, I mean, it's really the million dollar, actually the $100 million question. Um,
yeah,
right now, California it's opening. I mean, I will say, as crazy as the politics has been and all that, Gavin Newsom, the governor, they shut things down. They definitely flatten the curve and all those catchphrases, and it is opening back up, which is good. Maybe a little slower for everybody than what we want, but it is getting there. And so the industry is kind of taking its cues from the restrictions. And LA County, which is where Hollywood is, which is where we shoot, is the tightest of all these. And so it's a
uh,
little bit difficult. It's kind of like saying you're going to shoot in New York City. Well, that's the epicenter. If we were in Texas, Florida, Georgia, any of these other states, you might have a little easier time. And it's just been slow. I think, if you had to, bet, I think we'll be back late summer. We'll get going again. I think The Bachelor will be one of the first shows back, because I just think we're able to. We're not on a lot. We're not in a studio. I think we're a little bit more fluid and pliable as far as how we shoot, where we shoot, how many people are there. So I think, we're able to probably test and quarantine in a certain way a little more than most shows would. So hopefully we will be leading the way and get back as soon as possible. But I mean, it's a little early to tell, but that's
uh,
kind of the feeling of it.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Um, well, that's good. I'm sure fans are going to be super excited to hear that. I know there's a special coming out in a couple weeks or a week and a half or so, right? Is that special that way because of what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty much going to hopefully take the place of The Bachelorette. We would have been done with The Bachelorette by now, and it would be hitting the airs with Claire. But obviously, that plug was pulled, and we're waiting to do that. And so we came up with this idea of, people were clamoring for content, and they really haven't seen a lot of our old seasons. We've been on for 18 years. So a lot of people, like you said, just weren't born yet.
Yeah.
They haven't seen kind of what I call the Mount Rushmore of Bachelor shows. So we thought, let's create the most unforgettable ever, it's almost like a podcast where we're going to bring an entire season, just pack it into one 3-hour show. I'm going to host it. We're going to talk to people that were a part of that show, like Sean Lowe from Dallas. That season was epic. Jason Mesnick. Back to Trista our first Bachelorette, and Alex our first Bachelor.
Oh,
And people are
wow.
going to see the show was really
Wow.
different back then. It was
Yeah.
slower. Obviously, our clothes were different. Everything was so different. So people, but I think if you did it, if you showed the entire show like normal over 6 weeks, 10 weeks, I don't know if it would hold the interest because it's not the same type of show you're watching now. But I think if we pack it all in and it's kind of bite sized for everybody, it's going to be really interesting to watch.
Oh gosh, people are gonna flip over this. It's a great way to bring people back to the catalog of content. Like you said. Yeah, that's amazing. So basically, every episode will be one season.
Exactly. Every episode's going to be one season. We may,
Wow.
combine a couple of seasons
Sure.
if it works that way. But yeah, we're going to try and pack a whole season into one night. And then, it's going to look like this. I mean, honestly, I'm going to be
Yeah.
sitting by myself in front of a camera. And, I'll take the golf clubs out and put in some roses. That's,
Yeah.
it's going to be, kind of guerrilla shooting at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, all the shows are doing that right now, right? If you're watching, Jimmy Kimmel, right, Tonight Show. My favorite is Conan O'Brien. Personally, I just love that guy. He's hilarious. But those shows, right? Everybody's having to pivot and do this, right? Do the Zoom sort of things. How do you think that affects the industry? And do you think that maybe some of this will stick around, even though you know what I mean, moving forward?
Well, I think some things, it's definitely going to impact the industry. I think there is going to be a lot of network studios, whatever, that look at their production and look how much fat there was,
Yeah.
and realize there was 80 people shooting a show, and you've been doing it with 5 or
Yeah.
3. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Wow.
okay, now does it look good? No, we're sitting in front of our own fireplaces, and no makeup, lights, and all that stuff. So could we? Is there a happy medium there? And that's where the unions are going to come in, because the unions are going to fight. So it's going to be really interesting. There's going to be a big tug of war when we get out of this, and how many people are going to try to belabor this and draw it out, because you're getting around a lot of labor issues with this pandemic idea. So
Sure.
it's really going to be interesting to see where we land. And it's, probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But at any time when there is economic strife and drama, in our industry, and probably everybody's, it gives you a chance to kind of cut some fat. People
Absolutely.
like all of a sudden you have 5 assistants, and you have this and you have this, and it's like people doing people's jobs on top of people's jobs. Like, okay, let's bring it back down. And so, yeah, my guess is the pendulum's going to swing a little bit. And how we shoot, where we shoot, how many people work at home? Do the editors need to come in and sit, or can they work at home like they are? I think a lot of my friends are talking about, not just in my business, just like, do I need to be face to face in meetings anymore? Do I need to fly around the country? Do I need to do all the stuff I've been doing? Maybe not.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably the most interesting aspect to it. I've definitely seen a lot of articles here locally for the Austin commercial real estate. Again, people are already saying we're not even going to go back into offices. We're going to work remotely. You even got some big companies like Facebook and Shopify already saying they're going to start going remotely, or at least 50% of their staff. So yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting moving forward with it. I had a question about all the international bachelors that are get put all over the world. How involved are you with those?
No, we're not. We do the American version, and that's really it. What we do is we sell the brand and we sell the concept around the world, and that's what gets shipped to Australia, South Africa, all over the world. I don't know, like 178 countries or whatever do the Bachelor. I have
107.
helped.
Holy
It's
cow.
something crazy, and
Wow.
some show our version in subtitles, and then it'll
Uh,
be. It's been bizarre. Like we were in, I think we were actually in Spain, and you'll turn on the TV, and then randomly one of our old Bachelorette, you know, shows is on from like 10 years ago. You're like, what in the world? And so it's really been bizarre, but that's happened on a number of occasions. And then some, have our own version, and it's fun to see the Chris Harrison of France, or the version of
that's hilarious.
in
Yeah.
Russia. And so every now and then we will help, and we'll have producers come in, and they'll watch, like, Bachelor Vietnam, and we'll have these Vietnamese producers come in, and they'll sit and they'll watch and take notes. And a lot of times they'll ask me what I do and how I can help, and then they take their notes and they go back and do their own version. It's been it's interesting to see their take of it around the world.
Absolutely. I mean, that has to be something you're so proud of. You started something so long ago, didn't know where it was going to go, and now it's become this literally a global phenomenon, right? Like that's amazing, man. I just love hearing your story. Soccer scholarship, right? Go want to be a sportscaster, and then this opportunity just sort of blows up for you. I'm curious about soccer. I did look that up. Are you still a soccer fan? Do you still watch a lot of soccer?
I do, yeah. When there is, and actually, I was watching the Bundesliga the other day. Sitting there watching it with no fans, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't mind. I don't mind. I love the game, and I love watching it. So, yeah, I followed the EPL. I'm a big Arsenal fan.
Oh
And
wow. Okay, Arsenal. Yep.
it's fun for me because I get to again travel the world, and I've been good about it. As soon as I get to a city, I look up the schedule of where we are, and I'm like, okay, I'm in Barcelona. I'm going to go see Barca play, and we actually shot at Espanyol, their stadium there,
Oh,
and we had the whole place to ourselves. And it was just
oh my God.
unbelievable. And I went to the new camp
Wow.
twice. I saw a league game, and then I got to see a Champions League game. And then the next week we happened to be in Munich, and I went and saw Bayern Munich play. And so
Oh,
it's been fun to travel around. We were in South Africa, and it was funny that so we were in Cape Town, and they built this beautiful stadium for the World Cup. But South Africa had actually never played in that stadium, so for the first time they were going to play a friendly, and it just so happened they were going to play the United States in a friendly the week we were in Cape Town. And so
wow.
I got in touch with U.S. Soccer somehow, and I said, "Hey, I can't tell anybody we're here, but I'm shooting The Bachelor here. Can we?" And so I walked to the team hotel, and Team USA was sitting there eating breakfast the day of the game, and I got a bunch of tickets for our crew, and we went to the game. And the vuvuzelas were blowing and all that craziness, and so it's been fun to travel around the world and get to see. And I have a few of my buddies I played with in college and high school, and they'll come visit me, and we'll go see games and go to some of these matches, and it's awesome.
That's unbelievable. Wow. I was actually in Spain when they won the World Cup in
Oh,
2010. It was ridiculous. I mean, you talk about a
a spiritual
celebration.
experience, yeah.
Oh, it was a spiritual experience. I mean, I literally had these old women kissing me and hugging me. I never met before, but just coming up to me. It was like everybody was just kissing and hugging, and I was insane. I mean, people on their knees, like it couldn't believe that it had happened. Like I'd never seen anything like it since then, and you know what I mean. It was
Yeah, they
absolutely
you know they
crazy.
call it the beautiful game. I grew up with it, and I people go, "Oh, Dallas," but Dallas was really a hotbed of youth soccer, and it had one of the
It
biggest.
still is, right? I mean,
It really is, yeah, and it had one of the biggest youth tournaments in the world, the Dallas Cup, which I grew up playing in my whole life, and it was this international tournament. So the teams from the Royal Navy and Mexico and all that started coming, and then it grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And now there's this super group where you have the Manchester United groups and the whatever these clubs sending their youth programs over, and so that's what I grew up on and around Dallas. And I used to go. There's this place called Bachman Lake, right below Love Field, and I would go because all the Mexicans would get together and they played soccer out there at Bachman Park. There's these pickup games. And I would go by myself. I was, the only gringo there. And I just wanted to get better. And these guys had some ferocious games. And I would go and you would just get the crap kicked out of you and just get beat up to death. But that's why I wanted to play with these guys. And as soon as you earn their respect, and then I started going more and more and I got to know everybody. And I used to love going to these parks around Dallas and playing these games, these just pickup games. And that's how I cut my teeth. I couldn't play enough. I love the game. And it's this universal language wherever I go around the world.
yep.
That is a language everybody speaks. You can talk football. And then as soon as I can play football and you realize you can knock it around a little bit, people are like, oh, it's like a door, and you get to come in and all of a sudden you're friends with these people. So it's been a great kind of conduit to meeting people.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Why do you think what makes soccer, or football, like you said, that is what they call it in the rest of the world. What makes it so popular like that? What do you think it is?
Well, it was our identity. It's a little bit like what the Dallas Cowboys meant to me as a kid. That was my identity. I grew up under the hat of Tom Landry and Charlie Waters and Roger Staubach.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Yes.
that was just as it was as America and as Texas as you could get. That was our identity in Dallas. And as the Cowboys went, so went our mood. I mean, you could tell on Monday morning growing up in the 70s and 80s if the Cowboys won or lost. Well, multiply that times 1,000. And that is what these cities eat, drink, and sleep. And it is every city. It's every little city. And
Yeah,
you go from
you're
these
right.
pub teams to these lower divisions all the way up to the Premier League. We all know Liverpool and Manchester United, but when you go further and further down, every little city has a team. And that is your identity. It's your religion. It's based around your religion in many places. And it's like the Catholics, the Protestants, and sometimes it hasn't been so pretty, but it is an identity for your community. And so, we have that to a certain degree with college football and NFL football, but it's not quite the same. It's not that same passion that you get when you're overseas and you go to a true football game.
I agree. My mom's from Mexico City, and I used to grow up, going to Mexico all the time to stay with my family down there, and we would always go to these games, right, all the time when I was a kid, and so I got immersed in it as a young kid. Now, I never picked up the sport just because I was horrible at it, but I definitely, everyone always thought I could play, right? Oh, you're half Mexican, you must be great at soccer. I'm like, I'm not. I'm the worst soccer player you ever met in your life. But I definitely enjoyed, I think what it was for me is being down in Mexico, and I'd just go play with kids in the street. It's all we needed was a ball. Like, it made it so simple, and you didn't even need goals. We'd make goals out of whatever, right? Hit the wall, go in between this or whatever. I think, to me, that's what it makes it so popular to people. And like you said, it is a religion to these,
And when people ask, how can it become big in the United States, and why hasn't it become big? And it was
yeah.
big when I was a kid. The NASL was huge. We go see the Dallas Tornadoes, and we had
What about
Cairo
the
Junior,
sidekicks? Remember
the
Tattoo and
Dallas
the
Sidekicks,
sidekicks?
and
Yeah.
of course, and it was packed in Reunion Arena, and I went all the time. But the MLS needs time, and that's something you can't buy. It takes time to build a brand and build loyalty, and it's finally getting there. If you go to, the Seattle and Portland and Kansas City, and and these stadiums are being built for these teams, and now there's a community for it, and so we're getting there. It's not something you can teach. It's not something you can buy. It's getting there. And
Yeah.
I like that they have finally been patient enough. In LA, the LA team is huge out here. And there's two teams out here now, actually, but they've really
Oh,
built a
wow.
fan base. And it is crazy. You go to a game, it is like going to a game overseas. And they actually brought in these hooligans, hooligans to
Yeah.
teach the songs, to teach the chants, to
Wow.
create this atmosphere. And it's actually working. They've actually done a really good job. And so the MLS is getting there, and the quality of soccer had to get there too. I mean, when I started, when the MLS first began, there were people I had even played against in college and high school. And I'm like, you had these level guys, but then you had these level guys. And so
Got you.
now, the rising tide is lifting all boats, and we're all getting there where there's some really good competition going on. It's really great football that you're watching.
Yeah, I mean, it's the talent pool. They might have to start pulling players from Europe. I don't know how upset that would make, some American players who want the opportunity. But that's what happens in Europe, right? Everyone plays all over the place. You just sort of move around and try to build the best team you can. So yeah, that's so interesting. I do love the sport. I'm really excited about it. Chris, I really do appreciate your time. I know you have to go, but I do want to end on a couple of things. Texas. So I think our listeners and our viewers, and me in particular, would definitely like to know. Let's just what's your favorite Texas food to eat? Like, you know what I mean? You just craving.
Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, it's between Tex-Mex and because you don't get Tex-Mex out here in California.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. For some reason, people say, "Oh, I have this great place, Casa Vega. I have this great place in Ventura." You don't. You don't have a good Mexican place. So stop it, California.
I love it.
Now, what we do have is amazing, like shrimp and street tacos and that kind of. It is very Baja northern Mexico. It's just a different vibe. It's very bland, more seafood involved, but you don't get Tex-Mex. And so when I come home, it's the basics, the fajitas, chips, and queso, and I just to me it's a food group.
Yeah.
But I'm a big barbecue guy. I love to cook. I love to smoke. They do tri-tip out here. Again, that's not a barbecue, guys. Stop it. When you ask for a brisket, people look at you like, "What's brisket?" So I love my brisket. I love my ribs. I love to smoke. I love all that. And so my buddies and I, we would get our Texas Monthly, and we would, instead of wine tours, we would take our barbecue tours, and we would go find all the great, stops, and whether it's Black Snows and, obviously Franklin's you've been to, La Barbecue, we found many years ago. And you follow these pit masters around, and I've become friends with some of them too. And it's that, to me, the barbecue culture in Texas, especially around Austin, is unlike anywhere in the world. And I've done the Carolina barbecue. Is what sets Texas food and Austin food apart. I mean, yeah, Tex-Mex is fun and all that, but there's a culture around barbecue, and obviously it goes back to the Germans and how it came into existence, and it's fascinating to see what it's become. And yeah, it's been bastardized and commercialized like everything else. Kind of like South by Southwest used to be cool when I was in high school. Yeah. And it's just not anymore. As soon as Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z showed up, you're like, okay, this is garbage now. But the barbecue culture has still remained cool. And yeah, there's still, there are some people that sold out, but there's still some great little barbecue spots that you can go find.
Absolutely. The reality is, like, if you live here in Austin, for instance, like, you're a citizen, right? You live here. You're really not going to Franklin's or these places, right? You're going to these little food trucks that you found that serve just the most amazing stuff, right? It just will blow your mind away. You're absolutely right. It's an absolute culture here. And there's a good one. And I'm going to give a shout out to Leroy and Lewis here in Austin. They are amazing. If you ever hear they're off of South Congress, you'll hear about them in the next year or two. So this is sort of under the radar. They're amazing. Leroy and Lewis.
It's funny because so last time, many years ago, we were traveling around, and my buddy said there was this place called La Barbecue.
Yeah.
And it was this small little food truck in this dirt lot. And but what's funny is I met this guy Cameron, who's from Provo, Utah, and he actually came out of the truck because he recognized me from The Bachelor, and we have become good friends. He owns a place called Bam Bam's Barbecue in Provo, Utah, by BYU, and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I just came here to learn from the best and to make sure I was doing what everybody's doing, and take these tricks back home. And so it's funny that, it's like vintners and winemakers, they come into Napa Valley. The best of barbecue has now come into Austin, and they take it and they take it back to their own places. And so it's fascinating. Anytime I'm back in Austin, there's a day where I just,
get some barbecue.
You got to get your brisket, get your ribs, and now beef ribs have kind of become a thing, obviously, but it's still, to me, brisket is the crown jewel.
I agree.
If you can do brisket and ribs, that's what you got to be able to do well.
I agree. I actually worked briefly with Aaron Franklin, and he taught me how to cut a brisket. And I remember the first time I cut it in front of him, he gives me the brisket. I go to slice it, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Don't ever do it like that again." He said, he goes, "Don't ever do it like that again." I said, "Okay." I didn't even realize I've been cutting brisket my whole life. I didn't realize there was this actual special way, and there is, man.
Such a special.
He grabs it a certain way. You got to grab it. I mean, yeah. There's just this whole. It was crazy. It's crazy.
People say, you talk to these pit masters, you're like, okay, what is it? There is no secret, like salt and pepper and heat, low and slow. They all say they do the same thing, which is such BS, because it's the way you cut it. It's the way you do this. It's the type of heat. It's where the heat is. It's the type of wood. It's the mixture of the wood. There's so many things that go into it like that. They're like, no, man, salt and pepper. And then, you're like, keep it at 225 for 12 hours. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow, you do know your stuff. Yeah. Man, you do know your stuff, Chris. That's absolutely right.
I like to play around, and I love to smoke, and I will say my brisket, my ribs are damn good.
Wow.
And I like to try different ways of doing it, but you're right. The quality of meat, what you get, how it's cut. And now you can go online and see how these guys cut it. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's insane.
It's all about the aerodynamic, right? Like, that's what I learned from Aaron was just the aerodynamic of the cut. You've got to make it to where the smoke moves around the brisket in just a certain way. And I had never thought of that. I don't think anybody had ever taken that approach to brisket before he did that, to be honest with you.
And then you're getting that perfect red ring around the meat.
Exactly.
And it's
a real smoke ring. It's not a fake one.
Yeah,
There are
exactly.
fake smoke rings, which is crazy that happens, and it happens to steaks too. They do the same thing to
Yeah.
steaks to give the
Well, and
impression of
Dallas has gotten good. It hasn't gotten great. I mean, there's
yeah,
plenty of good barbecue places in Dallas, and I know
yes,
Pecan Lodge blew up when I was younger, and they turned from a food truck into an actual brick and mortar and something. But yeah, it's just there's really Lockhart's is great. There's some really good places in Dallas, but not like it's just not like Austin. It's just
I
again, it's
agree.
not in the blood. It's not in the soil of the
Yeah,
people, and so if you really want it, you gotta go to you gotta go down to Austin.
I agree, man. That's absolutely what you got to do. Well, look, Chris, gosh, I just can't tell you what a great conversation we had. I really appreciate all the time you took to talk to us and talk to us about food and probably some other things maybe you don't even get to talk about. So,
Yeah, exactly. Well,
yeah,
and just let me say, don't be mad. I know people get pissed off when the Californians invade. Don't be mad if I come back to Austin, okay? Like that's I started there, okay? I still
we
have that in
want
my
you
car.
here. We want
Okay.
you here. Trust me. I'm curious what any things that you have going on in the future. I know you said you have a brewery that you're a part owner of. Are there any other sort of brands or something that you're got coming out, or anything else that you have?
Well, that one right there. I did a collaboration with Seagram's Escapes Tropical Rosé. Seagram's Escapes and I came together and we built this brand, and it's Tropical Rosé. It's out around the country now. This light, refreshing 100-calorie drink, carbonated, perfect for cruising around on the
Oh yeah.
lake, cruising around by the pool. It's phenomenal. So I've been doing that, and obviously the Bachelor is a bit, is my baby, and that usually keeps me going 24/7. But I love the side projects, and I have a senior in high school who my son is going to TCU next fall. So got
Oh,
one heading back to Texas, and
oh,
yeah, really proud of him. And it's been tough for the senior class of
oh
2020.
God, right?
It's a beating. I feel bad for him.
Oh
And he
man.
plays lacrosse, and so spring sports
Oh
was canceled. He didn't
no.
get to have his senior year.
Oh.
Um, but he's had great perspective, and he's going to graduate, and he's going to go to TCU, become a Horned Frog, and so I'll be seeing people in Fort Worth a lot more next fall as well. Come hopefully, knock on wood, come football season.
Absolutely. Wow, TCU. Yeah, you're right. 2020 graduates. Just a horrific time. So yeah, my best to your son. I hope he's able to celebrate in some other way. Probably get creative with his friends, right? Come up
Yeah,
with another way.
I think this generation of kids, they're probably more well equipped to handle this than any generation because they're so used to being online and hanging out with their friends digitally and virtually. I think they're like, yeah,
That's a
not
good
so bad.
point. Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. If it would have happened to us, right? I graduated
Oh,
in
right.
'98. I would have had a meltdown probably. A total meltdown. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, good. So Seagram's. I'm sorry, Seagram's. I don't know why I said that. Seagram's Tropical Rosé. That sounds great by the
Yeah,
pool. Yeah.
you can go to Walmart's, Total Wines. If you have GoPuff in your area, you can order it online. They'll bring it to your door.
Oh,
So all the major stores, go check it out.
awesome, awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Again, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. Get out and do something fun today. I know I am.
Yeah, well, happy Memorial Day to everybody, and hopefully everyone will take just a second to remember what it's all about. And God bless those that paid the ultimate price, so you and I could sit here and have a silly conversation like this. God bless everybody who serves our country.
Absolutely, I agree. My father was in the Air Force, so 100%. I'm with you on that. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us about everything. We really do appreciate it. And we'll be looking forward to this summer season of highlights, like you said, the Mount Rushmore of the Bachelor seasons on
Bachelor,
Mondays,
the
right?
most unforgettable ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you again, Chris. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. My best to you and your family, and stay safe out there.
How about you? Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. All right. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as I did. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to email the podcast at patrick@texasrealfood.com. And don't forget, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all the different places you can get podcasts. You'll find us on there. Or you can just go to our website. Go to thelonestarplate.com. and you can find everything you need there, all the episodes. And you can check us out on YouTube if you want to watch it. We video these now, on a little webcam here and do the Zoom stuff. And, so if you feel like doing it that way, go to the Texas Real Food YouTube channel and you can find it there. Make sure to follow Texas Real Food as well on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe. And if you are so inclined, please leave us a review anywhere you can. Follow us on Spotify or leave a review on Apple Podcast. That would really help us out as well. So if you support, what we're trying to do here. So thanks again for listening. Really do appreciate it. Without you guys, what's the point of doing this? So if you have any suggestions on how we can make the show better, please let us know. All right. Thanks again. Be safe out there. Wash your hands.